Target.
Hi, I'm Ethel Hill. I've been living in the village of Wild Lake since my family moved here in 1969. We moved here from Philadelphia after my husband accepted a position at Social Security and headquarters. He was recruited from the Philadelphia Urban League. And I remember when he brought me out here to see this new town that was being built. Uh, it was really muddy and not much to look at. And we went to the exhibit building to see the vision. And I remember my husband saying that you got to use your imagination. It is muddy, but it's not gonna be like this. And so we moved to Running Brook, which at that time was the last village, the last neighborhood, and the oldest village of Columbia.
What do you think about Columbia now?
It's wonderful. I've been here longer. I've lived in Columbia longer than I lived in Pennsylvania, where I was originally from. But when we moved here, we had two daughters, and the oldest one was 11, and the younger one was 10. Running Brook Elementary School was not finished, so the youngest one, Terry, opened up Faulkner Ridge Elementary School, and Donna opened up Wild Lake Middle School.
What are your daughters doing now?
Well, Donna works for the Attorney General of the state of Maryland, Brian Frosh, and Terry is a plastic surgeon, and she was elected to the state. Uh,
Delegate.
she was elected delegate to the state legislature 2 years ago. She's getting ready to start her third year. Um, so it's been wonderful.
What do you see as the future of Columbia?
Well, I have to tell you, it really has amazed me with all of the growth that I've seen. It's I think a lot more than Jim Rouse envisioned. But had he still been living, he might have changed his mind too as times changed. And I was fortunate enough to know Jim and Patty very well. They were wonderful neighbors, and he appreciated those of us who were volunteers and the things that we did. And one of the highlights of my relationship with him was that I was invited to be one of the roasters that the Oakland Mills Village Board gave, and the chair of that was Trent Mitchell Kittleman. Trent and I have been friends since we were both on our respective village boards. But at any rate, so I was one of the roasters, and Jim was taking me around. He wanted me to meet his niece and some other relatives who were here. Barbara Mikulski was here at that time, and Senator Mathias, who was also a good friend of Jim's. And so he was a roaster as well. And I remember Jim saying to me, Senator Mathias is a star, but you are a luminary. And I was so tickled. I had never heard that before. But whatever we asked him to do, he just loved the concept of Columbia and the village. And when we celebrated our 10th anniversary, I chaired the celebration for Wild Lake Village. And I asked Jim and Patty to be parade marshals because I planned this big parade. And of course he did. And we just had a lot of fun. For a period of time, I was chair of the Wild Lake Middle School PTA. And, well, no, I was, but that was not the point I wanted to make. What I wanted to say was after being involved with the PTA, Norma Rose recruited me to run for the village board, and I did. And I subsequently, became chairman. And while I was chairman, Jim Rouse changed the color of his door without getting permission from the architectural committee. So, of course, they wrote him a letter letting him know that he was in violation. And since I was the chairman of the village board, my name was on that letter. And Jim was very apologetic. He wrote a letter apologizing to us and submitted a request to be able to change the color of his door. I think he changed the door to red. But he was just that kind of guy, just, really a part of everything that went on. And the children loved him because he was a constant presence. He wore that plaid jacket that he had forever. The children all recognized him. He'd always have a wisp of hair from the top of his head, but just quite a man. And I often hear people say, oh, Jim Rouse would have said this, and Jim Rouse would have said that. Well, they weren't even living here then. And although I knew him well, I don't know what Jim Rouse would have said, and I wouldn't even venture to guess what his opinion would be, for instance, about what's going on downtown.
What do you see as the future of Columbia?
Well, it's going to continue to grow. People's visions change. The newer residents of Columbia, and of course the children who have grown up here and are now adults, they have different ideas about what they want. So, a lot of us were not happy with the concept of what happened downtown, but that's life.